Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We will be launching our webinar now about building career pathways with local government staff. We're hosting today with ILG in partnership with Regional Government Services. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Taylor Buck. I am your host and moderator today. I am a program manager with the Institute for Local Government, and we are so thrilled that you all are able to join us. To go over what we'll be talking about as part of today's webinar, of course, we are starting off with a welcome and some introductions, and then we will transition into some excellent panelists today talking about winning the war for the talent, then leadership development and accessibility lessons learned, and then building the structures that support employee engagement, retention, and sustainability. And then we'll transition into a panel discussion, an audience Q&A, and we will wrap up for today. To quickly go over how you can engage with us during this session, there is a quick overview here about how to ask a question using GoToWebinar. You'll notice that all webinar participants will be on mute during the entire call, but if you do have any questions for us, please type them into the question box. You can see this graphic here on the slide shows exactly where you can pop those questions. And then I will have the chance to review and read your questions during the Q&A part of our webinar. I'll also flag for everyone who may want to use our, or have the chance to review and look at the materials from today's webinar a little bit more closely, that we are recording this session and we will be distributing the materials electronically via email following the webinar. So keep an eye out for those resources. And then we just would like to share a little bit about the Institute for Local Government. Quickly, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that really focuses on training and education. We are affiliated with the 3 statewide local government associations, the League of California Cities, the California State Association of Counties, and the California Special Districts Association. And with our affiliates, we serve over 2,500 local agencies, including cities, counties, and special districts. We also provide practical and easy to use resources that really try and meet local agencies where they are and implement any policies or initiatives they may be tackling on the ground. And then to go over ILG's programs and services at a very high level, we are guided by 4 program areas known as our pillars. That includes leadership and governance, civics education and workforce, public engagement, and sustainable and resilient communities. And we support that work and support those pillars with a few different work areas, including education and trainings, technical assistance, capacity building, and convenings. And overarching all of that is our mission, which is, of course, to help local government leaders navigate the challenges and complex issues that you face and increase capacity and building trust, of course, with communities, which comes number 1. So now to transition into the fun part of today's event, I will quickly introduce our presenters. Today we are joined by Dr. Frank Benest. He is the liaison for Next Generation Initiatives at ICMA. We are also joined by Jen Anderson, Senior Learning and Development Specialist at SMUD. And lastly, we are also joined by Sophia Sullivanov, Director of HR Services from Regional Government Services, JPA. And we'd also like to learn a little bit about who is in the room with us today, the virtual room. So we will launch a couple of polling questions here. The first being, what type of agency are you with? And if you're able to engage with us and answer the polling questions on your screen, we would appreciate that. Alrighty. I believe our first question is up. What type of agency are you with?
About 75% of people responded, Taylor, so I'm just going to give this another couple seconds.
Fantastic, thank you.
go ahead and close this out, and I will share the results. Taylor, can you see those, or do you want me to read them off for you?
I will go ahead and stop sharing so that you can. Let's see here.
Oh, no, they're up on the screen, but can you see them, or do you want me to kind of share with the attendees?
Oh, please go ahead and share. That would be great.
Perfect. So we've got almost 2/3 of folks on the line are with a city. About 1/4 of folks on the line are with a county, and then about 6% each with special districts and other.
Fantastic.
We'll go ahead and launch our next poll.
Perfect. What part of the state are you from? Thank you all so much for engaging with us.
And about 75% of people participating again, so I'll give this just another couple seconds. Close this and share the results. So about 40% of people are from Northern California, 12 from the Central Valley, 4% from the Inland Empire, another 34 from Southern California, and almost 10% from the Central Coast.
Fantastic. Thank you all so much for providing those responses. That's just helpful for us to know, and we're excited to see so many folks joining us in the virtual room today. All righty, so to transition now to our first guest speaker, I will hand it over to Frank to discuss his content as part of our slides. Frank, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Taylor. I'm going to explore how local governments can develop a culture of learning and coaching as a strategy for attracting, retaining, and growing talent. Next slide, please. Before I get started, let me share sort of the 5 big ideas from my brief presentation this afternoon. First of all, we're in a war for talent, and we're losing the war. Talent is mobile. It can go anytime, it can exit anytime and go any place. The third big idea is that local government can better attract, retain, and grow talent if we focus on organizational culture. Certainly, local government agencies must be competitive in terms of salary and benefits, but you win the war for talent on culture. Number 4, enhancing organizational culture, including coaching and learning, is cheap, but it does require intention and focus. And then finally, the bottom line, culture trumps everything. Next slide, please. So what is culture? What is organizational culture? It would seem like it's sort of a swishy term, but culture is defined as the way we do things around here. It includes our values and beliefs, and most importantly, our behaviors. Think of culture as the operating system of the organization. So why is it important? A positive culture, one that is engaging and energizing for employees, leads to, and the research shows this, higher productivity, more creativity and innovation, better customer service, lower costs, including worker comp costs and the cost for recruiting and retraining folks. And most importantly, positive culture draws talent to the organization and helps you keep it. Now, the silver lining to the pandemic, there's been a few silver linings, but one of them is that it offered the organization the opportunity to now reset culture in a variety of ways to better engage and energize employees. Next slide, please. So let's collect some data from you as your agency transitions from the pandemic to the post-pandemic. Here's the polling question. Do your chief executive, department heads, and managers focus on organization, culture, and how to enhance it? Select one, yes. Enhancing culture is a key goal of management, and they're doing tangible things to improve it. Sometimes management talks about how to improve it and takes steps to improve it. Sometimes management talks about culture, but doesn't do anything to improve it. And no, enhancing culture is not a key concern of management. So let's take a moment, please, and select one from the 4 choices. When you're done voting, we'll see the results.
At about 50% right now, so I'm going to give it a little bit more
Okay,
time.
please vote, everybody.
Almost everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and close this, and then I will share the results.
Okay, so the largest number is 40%. Sometimes management talks about improving culture and takes some action. Then we have sometimes management talks about it, but doesn't improve culture. That's 29% of us. And 1 in 5 said that enhancing culture is a key goal of management, and they take some steps to improve it. And 9% said no, enhancing culture is not a key concern of management. Now, here's my view. It used to be that enhancing organizational culture was a nice discretionary goal and responsibility of senior management. Now it is a key business necessity. It's no longer nice and discretionary. It has become the talent issue, the talent challenge has become a key business necessity. Next slide, please. So what do employees want in returning to the office? There is some survey research that indicates that top management is using higher compensation and enhanced family-oriented benefits to lure people back to the office as it transitions from the pandemic. This is sort of a transactional approach that top management is taking. Now, employees certainly want better compensation given inflation, and certainly desire more and better family-oriented benefits. But what employees really want is a relational, not a transactional, but a relational approach. For instance, I feel connected to the organization. The organization cares about me and my family. The organization is committed to my growth and development. People appreciate me and the work that I do. This is more of a relational approach. And so a lot of employees think the top management that is using a transactional approach just is clueless because they don't get it. Employees want a relational approach. Next slide, please. Now, my research indicates that there is at a minimum 5 key elements to an energizing and engaging culture. First one is purpose and meaning, and we in local government do pretty well in that area. The second one is autonomy and flexibility. We're improving in that area because people are doing remote work or hybrid work. The third area is learning and growth, including coaching. I'm going to be talking about that in a moment. Number 4 is belonging. I belong here. People care about me. My opinion counts. I have a seat at the table. And then finally, appreciation. people care about me, they appreciate me, who I am, and what I bring to the organization. Next slide, please. Now, let's focus on this key element of learning and coaching, which is one of the 5 elements to this energizing and engaging culture. So how do we create a culture of learning and coaching? Well, there are many ways. Let me share a few ideas with you quickly. First of all, management provides opportunities to stretch and grow. The best kind of learning is not classroom training, it's learning by doing. So in this kind of situation, managers actively look for stretch assignments for their direct reports, team leadership opportunities, and interim positions for their employees. Another idea is, of course, focusing on this notion of embracing mistakes. Well-intentioned mistakes are seen as opportunities to grow and learn. And in this kind of situations, teams debrief all experiences, not only at the end of the project, but also as it occurs. And they ask 3 big questions. What is going well? What is not going so well? And what are we learning to enhance the project going forward and our practice in general? The third idea here is part of their roles, managers are trained to have development conversations with their direct reports. When I was city manager in Palo Alto, we trained all mid-managers, all supervisors, on how to conduct a development conversation with their direct reports. What are your hopes and dreams? What are some things that stand in your way? What are some options for advancing and overcoming those obstacles? Who's on your dream team of advisors? What's a bold leap for you? How can I help? It's not brain surgery, but it does take, again, a little training and some focus. Another, of course, another idea is to embed learning into the rituals of the organization. So, for example, you can start all your staff meetings with a learning report. You can share what you're learning from leading a project team, or you can share some learning from an article or a class that you have attended. Again, in Palo Alto, we started all staff meetings with a learning report. And then, of course, you can encourage all employees to get coaching internally and externally. Let me give you a few examples. San Mateo County provides a one-to-one coach who is trained to any supervisor, anyone who is promoted into a supervisory or management position. Valley Water in Santa Clara County, they have created a one-to-one coaching mentoring program, and anybody in the organization can get a one-to-one mentor or coach. Here in the Bay Area, I've been involved in starting 4 or 5 leadership academies, and everybody in those leadership academies gets a one-to-one coach. And finally, the ICMA coaching program provides one-to-one coaches, and I'll talk a few moments about that. But the upshot is that talent is drawn to an organization whose culture promotes talent development. Learning and coaching creates organizational stickiness. People tend to stay with an organization if they are learning and getting coaching and other support. Once they stop growing and learning, they tend to leave. So learning is the new social glue. Next slide, please. Now, the go-to resource available to all local government employees, free, it doesn't cost any money, and you don't have to be a member of ICMA. ICMA is the International City County Management Association. It's the ICMA coaching program, and we provide 6 webinars, live webinars during the year, and there's also 70 webinars on our archives. And so anybody or any team can pull down a webinar and participate in the webinar. And then their most directly related to the topic today is one-to-one coaching. Anybody can go to icma.org/coaching at the website you see on your slide. They can go to Coach Connect, which is an online registry of 250 coaches. They can review the profiles, and then they can pick a coach or two. And they can send the coach an email. The coach has already agreed to be your coach. You can have a one-time conversation. You can have a periodic conversation or an ongoing relationship. Greatest thing since sliced bread. And then finally, for the coaching program, I write a monthly career compass advice column. It's like Dear Abby, only it's Dear Frank. There is a few of the columns that are resources for this webinar. How do I benefit from a coach to thrive in the post-pandemic, enhance the employee experience, and use return to the office to reset culture? If you're interested in receiving those, you can get them by going to the website. But if you want to receive each new column directly to your inbox, send me an email at frank@frankbennis.com, and I will send you a link so you can subscribe. frank@frankbennis.com. Again, ICMA coaching program is available to each and every one of you and all your colleagues in local government. It's free and it's a great resource. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Frank. We appreciate your insights. I will now turn it over to Jen, who will speak to us about her slides. Jen, I'll kick it over to you.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. I'm one to accidentally always talk on mute, so wanted to make sure I wasn't doing that. Hi, everyone. My name is Jen Anderson, and like you learned earlier, and I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about some of the stuff we do at SMUD. In case you're not familiar with SMUD, if you're anywhere near the Sacramento area, you probably are. But if you aren't, SMUD stands for Sacramento Municipal Utility District, and we are the nation's 6th largest community-owned, not-for-profit electric service provider. We've been providing low-cost, reliable electric service to Sacramento County for more than 75 years. We're very invested in our community and being a part of our community, and I think you'll see that through some of the stuff I talk about today. So you can move on to the next slide. This is just a little bit about me in case you forget after we meet, but I'm a senior learning and development specialist for our kind of corporate career development and learning team. I'm also the program manager for our internal leadership development program that I'll be talking about called BLT, and a co-chair of our Pride Employee Resource Group. So we at SMUD like to be really involved in things. So it's nice to meet you all. So today I'm going to just talk about 3 topics, and it was really exciting to hear Frank's presentation because there's a lot of similarities. So I think we're seeing some really great best practices. But I'm going to talk about SMUD's leadership development initiatives and opportunities that are available to employees. Talk about accessibility practices, meaning allowing people and employees throughout SMUD access to these programs because our leaders are coming from everywhere in the organization. And then talk about some lessons learned. So hopefully you'll have some good takeaways that you can use to implement in your own organizations. You can go to the, thank you. So this is one of our early groups of our leadership program, but our internal leadership development program is called Building Leadership Talent. I feel like whoever came up with that really loved that idea of the acronym being BLT because it just is funny to me. So this is our experiential leadership program that started in 2007. We're currently on our 12th cohort, so it's been going for a while and we don't hit it every year. And we've had a lot of our current executive team who's been a part of this program in the past, and our current CEO, Paul Lau, was actually in the pilot version of this group. So when the team came together with this, they really looked around at best practices everywhere to put together this experiential program. Like Frank said, right? It's not just classroom training that people learn from, they learn from experience. And that this program is all about giving them a lot of different experiences. So if you want to switch to the next slide, I'll just kind of quickly go over the program objectives. So we really look to develop future leaders with like leadership skills and what is needed now for leaders. and really getting them ready for the roles they're in and the roles they could be in. We kind of look at leaders, anyone could be a leader at SMUD. And so we want to equip a lot of employees with those skills. We want to build leaders where they can really expand their contribution and make an impact. And again, like I said, demonstrate leadership in their current roles. I've been the program manager for this program for about 4 years, and we have a wide variety of employees who participate, from people who are already in leadership positions to those who aren't. We also really want to enhance the business acumen of our staff, and so they get involved with a lot of different parts of the business to really understand how SMUD functions as a whole, which should help them in their career. And then again, helping them to develop their internal and external networks that will help them as they continue through SMUD or maybe with another organization. So the program is broken out into 3 phases. If you want to go to the next slide, we'll just take a quick look at those. I'm going to go into detail about this in a second, but I just wanted to show you the phases and the components, and then I'll show how they kind of work together. We look at it as about 12 months or so long for the actual program, and it's got these 3 phases of self-discovery, team, and individual learning, and then kind of evaluation and give back. So like I said, I'll talk about that a little bit more, but you can see a bulk of it is in that second area. The next thing are the 5 kind of core components. So if you want to go to the next slide, thank you. These are the 5 things that we really focus on in our internal leadership program, and these are kind of best practices all around. We have this idea of that community of practice, of bringing the group together to learn from each other and do a lot of that type of thing. We have a lot of assessments they go through to kind of find out initially where they're at, work style, preference, leadership style and preference. So they know kind of their strengths, opportunities for growth. We have some training we offer them. They also do some coaching, like Frank mentioned, that one-on-one coaching is very important. And one of the biggest components is the community project, which I'll talk about in just a minute. So let's go ahead and dive in to our first section, which is that self-discovery. So when they start with BLT, the first 3 months or so really do focus on this kind of internal self-discovery, finding out where they're at. We have them go through a lot of career assessments. So we put some of these up here so you can see what they do. MBTI, Emergenetics is one that we've been using the last few years. We used to do Strengths Finders. I think we moved that off. We also use the Korn Ferry competencies internally at SMUD. So we have them also go through a 360 with Korn Ferry as they initially start. And that's really interesting because, you know, we have them pull to get that feedback from their leaders and customers and people that they interact with. So they can really get a sense of that impact that they're making and, again, identify things that they might want to learn on. And from those assessments, they get definitely tired of it. We work with them and develop an individual development plan. We do like one-on-one coaching after the assessments to really talk through it. And we focus on kind of the findings, what was surprising, what wasn't, focusing again on their strengths, and then kind of coming up with some goals. You know, what are some skills they want to advance while they're in the program, maybe some knowledge, like what is it they want to do? And it's really individual based on where that employee is at in their career. And then we move into the second phase of our program. So if you can switch to the next slide. And that's kind of the bulk of our program. That's that individual and team learning. So the biggest parts of this are the training and our monthly sessions. So the trainings, we do about these 4 different kinds. We start off with a team building, and then we do some leadership competencies. Putting it all together is a chance for them to come together with all their kind of assessment results and see how they fit together as a team. But we have them do that in the beginning so they can utilize those skills throughout the program. And then we have monthly sessions. In the beginning, the first 6 weeks of the class, we do meet weekly, and then we rotate into a monthly format. And in these monthly formats, this really gives them the chance to learn from each other. So they pick topics for different group presentations, and they are put in pairs, and they present on business and leadership topics. So that way they can kind of continue their learning throughout. They do some peer coaching so they can start to work through problem solving with these leadership skills. And we bring in some executive speakers. And we try to get everyone from our executive team in so they can learn about their journey and where SMUD is at, and really kind of have that time together. The last couple of years have been interesting because obviously in 2020 we were kind of mid-program and we had to switch everything over, and we've learned a lot in kind of offering this virtually and in person. So it's been a really interesting last couple of years. If you want to go to the next slide. So also a part of this is that one-to-one coaching I mentioned. So we select certain director level associates. And so for us at SMUD, that's just below our executive level. And that way they can meet with someone who's outside of their work group and usually at a much higher level than they are, and get some of that leadership experience and knowledge. And sometimes for some people, this is kind of their first mentor or coaching experience. So it really gives them another perspective as they're going through this program. And then we have our last phase here, which is that evaluation and give back. And this is kind of where we're going to just quickly focus on that community project. They, as a group, pick a project, community organization to work with, and they come up with like the plan and they put it all together. And that really gets them working with all different departments across SMUD, marketing, community affairs, leadership, all the different things. This current cohort partnered with Single Mom Strong and set up a career closet, so single moms could go in and get clothes as they are preparing for entering the workforce or job interviews and that sort of thing. So it's been really great, and that's a picture from our most recent event. So that's a quick summary of our program. You can see there's a lot of they're doing this on top of their regular jobs. There's a lot into it, so they're really investing a lot of their time and energy into growing. If you want to skip 2 slides, I'll just go to the other external programs that we use. So another awesome thing that SMUD does is we partner with other local leadership, experiential leadership programs, and our employees get a chance to do those. So here's a sampling of some. I would definitely encourage you to look in your area to see what other types of leadership programs there are. I went through the first one here, Catalyst. It was really, really great. I learned a lot about different businesses around Sacramento. And it really gives them, again, another chance for that experiential leadership, because all these programs have, different attributes and qualities that they use. And again, it gets people kind of in the community, it lets the community know more about SMUD. And then budget-wise, we kind of work with the department. So sometimes they cover part of the enrollment fee, and then our corporate learning development does. So there's kind of a partnership there because it's benefiting all of SMUD. If you want to go to the next slide, I'll quickly talk about another opportunity that we've recently formalized, which is our mentoring program. We just had a kickoff for our second round of it today. And so this gives people an opportunity, if they don't want to be in a leadership program, where they can serve as a mentor or get experience as a mentee. All of our programs have an application process to try to keep things fair and give everyone a chance. And with this, we really work on pairing people, the mentor and the mentee, with someone outside of your work group, giving you, again, more exposure to the organization, and kind of also pair people up on what are they wanting to get out of it. Is there career development? They're wanting to climb that corporate ladder, whatever that is, pairing them up with like a mentor that's really going to help them get that. We also have this just set as a 6-month program, and we have some specifications for how that should look like, but it's really up to the mentor and the mentee to run that. But we also have that end time, so that way you can kind of end it if you want and move into another relationship. So that's been really, really valuable, and a lot of work has been put into that. So if you want to skip again just 2 more slides, because I want to make sure I don't eat up all the time. So again, kind of that accessibility that we talked about, that's my second point, is our selection process, I think, really helps, because like I'm sure many of you do, we have employees who work in a wide variety of jobs, not just that typical office job where they can easily take training whenever they want. We've got call center employees, we've got line crews. And so we have this application process. So if you're interested, you work with your manager. And I think that, as we've set the guidelines for these programs, working with the managers and the leaders to understand what are the requirements so people can get pulled out, really encouraging that. So that way we can expand this and make this available to all employees, but bringing the leaders, I think, into that initial process and letting them know what the commitment is. And honestly, we're continuously working with them on that for those jobs where it's harder to pull people out. So I would say definitely don't shy down from it, lean into it, talk to people, open those lines of communication, because it's wonderful. Right now we have someone who's a customer service representative in our call center and our leadership program. And it's really great. You know, she's getting a lot of experience she wouldn't normally have, and she's providing so much knowledge that a lot of the other employees don't have. Also, since we participate in those other external programs, if people apply for a program and don't get into it, we have these other options where we can talk to them about their career goals and find some program that might work for them better in that time frame. So that's really helpful. Just go ahead and skip to 2 more slides, just skipping those header slides there. And I just thought I would end with some quick lessons learned. I think the first lesson is continuous improvement. We started with a great program, but it's been built over time where it's become more extensive. So sometimes you just got to get started and you can add to it, you know, each year as you go in. And we've also found the last few years, actually, the groups are building in improvements for the next group. They've really taken pride in making this program better. The other thing with this, since it's for the organization, is keeping communication open with everyone, you know, with our executives, really letting them know the benefits and what's happened with these programs. You know, again, talking to leadership throughout the organization to allow for a diverse applicant pool into the program has been very beneficial. And then like a lot of our programs like this, it's educating the organization on the impact that it's making. So what skills are people learning? How are things getting improved? How is this helping the organization? I think that's always important because sometimes we forget that and people don't realize the value. And I will say the BLT program at SMUD is one that, you know, has some respect and people, it means something if you've been through that. So that is a lot of an information dump. I'm happy to talk to anyone about anything else. If you have any questions, my last slide here has a link to or a QR code to my LinkedIn. So if you want to connect, more than happy to share more information. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jen. We really appreciate all of that helpful information, and we really look forward to delving into it even further as part of our Q&A session coming up soon. I will, before we transition into Sophia's presentation, I'll just make another quick plug for folks to please submit any questions for our panelists via the questions toolbar that's found within your control panel. We really appreciate you submitting those questions. All right, so I will now turn it over to Sophia. Sophia, take it away.
Thank you, Taylor, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. I'm really excited to work with Frank's presentation and Jen's and kind of back up a little bit to the 30,000-foot level. I've been spending a lot of time on systems in my career in recent years, and I want to talk about some really important things for the success of the tools and techniques that Frank and Jen have brought you. Frank mentioned a wonderful sort of interview with employees where we ask about people's hopes and dreams and what stands in the way. And the one thing I want to start with here is that often we stand in our own way and we stand in the way of our employees. So having said that, let's talk about the systems and how we can get out of our own way and let the energy and investment that we're making succeed. So if you want to jump over to the next slide for me, Taylor, please. Failure to retain talent affects the whole system. It affects our customers, it affects the employees, it affects our budgets. Plus, we spend a lot of money trying to find new talent. So I'm leading with this because this is motivation for everybody to get involved, and we really need to not make it one person's problem, it's everybody's issue. Next slide, please. When we have retention programs, and whether we call them succession plans, which is about the organization's desire to not have talent gaps, or we call them career paths, which is about the organization's desire to have ways for employees to grow, our goal is talent retention and employee engagement. And these are good programs, they're worthy efforts, and we spend quite a bit of energy and money on them, as we heard from Jen, but they do not succeed if they're in a system that doesn't allow them to actually flow out from the program and succeed. So let's take a look at how that works. The next slide. Actually, what we're going to look at is how it kind of might not work. I think it's easier to look at those examples and then think of what we can do to make it work. So in our system, we have a lot of elements, and I've just kind of graphically represented 3 here: our org charts, our job descriptions, our policies. And I'm going to walk through how the 3 of these interplay systematically to help or not help all of the efforts that we're making with our employee development and retention programs. Next slide, please. So let's consider our friend, Terry Allen. Terry is a maintenance worker who's got some years with us and some great performance, doesn't have a lot of education, has gone to our well-designed and well-developed, thank you, Jen, program of employee development, has been very successful in a sort of special assignment to apply some of those skills, and is now feeling encouraged to put in for a supervisory position. Next slide, please. What we find out here is that our supervisory positions are staffed in a system. And I just went on the internet and pulled some basic MQs, and I just listed a couple of ways in which we approach identifying candidates. So if we were to look at that first one, where we're going to have an MQ screen, and our MQs are 5 years of experience, including a year of experience in a supervisory position, Terry's not been a supervisor. So Terry's going to get screened out right away. So all of our effort and energy and engagement and excitement around Terry suddenly came to a screeching halt here. If you look over to the left, where we have a written examination as our approach to screening candidates, and we have a lot of, you need education, but we could allow you, because that's how we are, that's our way we do things, to substitute some stuff. Terry might get to come sit and take that test. That could be a little frightening, and it might be a little technical, and we don't know how well Terry will do there. If we go to the last methodology of screening for candidates, which is to say we're not even going to the open market because we have great people working for us, let's just do an internal recruitment with a promotional interview. Now Terry has an opportunity with a promotional interview and these really, really broad MQs to come to the room, talk about all those great things that we saw on the previous slide that qualify Terry to be a supervisor. Because supervision isn't really about those technical skills and knowledge that we see over there with the written exam. It's really about that coaching and the ability to work with new employees and get them oriented and make sure that everybody's having a good work experience. So systematically, right here, we can see how if we don't build out our system around these great programs, we might run into some troubles that make our investments less valuable, less worthwhile, and less returning on those investments than we had hoped. Let's talk a little bit about rethinking employee growth in general. Next slide, please. So our systems are very structured in the public sector, and we talk about a job, and it has a description, and that's what it is. And we talk about promotion, which is moving from one of those to another. It is important when we think about employee growth to be a little more open-ended than that. What is the role? If a person is an analyst, their strengths are analytical in nature, they could do a variety of jobs. If a person wants to grow but doesn't want to promote to the box that you have on your org chart, what else could we do? So we have to start shifting our thinking to employee growth rather than moving through the existing structure. In fact, we have to go a little farther than that. Can you go to the next slide, Taylor? So let's look at this structure that we have in this mythical organization, and I'm using HR because that's my field and I know it well. But we have an HR director, and they've been there a while, and the incumbents' key activities are to design HR programs and to negotiate with labor unions about them. They love that, they do it. They have built wonderful relationships with labor unions. It's a really valuable set of contributions. Underneath that HR director, we have a couple of boxes for senior analysts, for compensation and benefits, for recruitment and classification, for training and development. Now, In a succession plan, we hope those people will be the pool for the HR director eventually, right? In a career path, we hope those people will find a trajectory through the organization. Now, we've already limited ourselves by the fact that this is a hierarchy. So let's think about some ways we can unlimit ourselves, right? If we go to the next slide, we can see that the promotional path could be changed by doing a really simple thing, which is to say, none of the people who are senior analysts is necessarily a labor expert, but if we hired a labor expert as a consultant and we said the relationship building is important, which is a skill you should have, but it doesn't require the technical knowledge of bargaining a contract in a legally compliant manner, all of a sudden, all of these people become a pool for our HR director. They could design programs, they could build relationships, and we've supported that by saying, maybe not forever, but at least for now, we're going to hire a labor expert so you don't have to be one in order to get promoted. So that's a way we can rethink our structures and systems just to get people promoted. If we look at the next slide, we can see we could go even farther than that. Taylor? Okay.
I think that's the next slide. Sorry, Sophia, is that the correct one?
It is. I'm sorry, my original had a different color set and I was expecting something else. Yeah, so in this instance, what we are saying is, let's take some of that programmatic design and give it to those senior analysts. I mean, they don't have to be just going through the transactional administration. We could have them work with agency leaders across the entire agency, bringing their expertise to that group. Those leaders would learn from them. They could develop programs and systems. They could get direct feedback rather than top down on what's working and not working in different parts of the organization. Now we've created an opportunity path for these people, which is rewarding, skills developing, but not necessarily requiring that that HR director has to even leave in order for somebody to have that opportunity. So I think it's very important that we break down those barriers and rethink what it is we're actually trying to accomplish here. If you go to the next slide, people say to me, well, Sophia, we need systems. And that is true, we do. I'm not saying that we should be completely open-ended here, but systems are designed to be fair and efficient. And what we need to do is we need to be effective rather than efficient. And we need to rethink what is fairness. Fairness does not mean treating everyone the same. Fairness means that we give everyone opportunity. And I think we're going to find that we get better results if we redefine what those sort of policy parameters are, system parameters are, and try to achieve something that's better than what we have right now. Next slide, please. Some other things to think about. Rewards and pay are not the same thing. Success and promotion are not the same thing. And even engagement and performance are not the same thing. You can have employees who perform pretty well because they have personal pride about it and they're still not engaged with you. So we cannot use some of our traditional indicators and assume we know what's going on. What we really need to do, and Frank is completely right about this, is we need to get relational with people. If you can go to the next slide. Everything that we are seeing in research says that people want a very specific personal set of rewards, success, and engagement. So it is important that we notice and appreciate the value that people add. It's important that we give them an opportunity to add more value. And it's important that we let them know that we care that they're there adding the value. And if we can design our systems to do that, yes, of course, we're going to do pay and promotion and performance assessment, but we're going to engage and retain and inspire talent development so much more. Can we go to the next slide, please? So I've been talking about some HR things, but HR is not the whole of your system. You have a lot of things in your system. You have budgets, you have supervisory authority that you delegate or don't. You have decision-making processes whereby if it's not signed off by the city manager, then it doesn't happen. This sometimes gets in the way of our actually making a flexible system that's responsive to the needs of our employees. And I would very much encourage everybody to, keep going down the line. We got this far, what's standing in the way now? Can we redo that? Can we reallocate effort? Can we reallocate money? Can we engage everyone in this process? One of the big system elements that's an impediment to all of us, and it's completely invisible, is that everything is somebody's job. And when that one person has too much to do, they're deciding what to do or not to do. If we can spread some of this around and make it a lot of people's job, like everybody's job in the organization, then we have strengthened our system and we've made sure that the investments that we're making in training and development and recruitment and hiring are not being wasted. You can go to the next slide, please, Taylor. So I just want everybody to know, before we're done here, replacing employees is very, very expensive, and it's not very much fun. So we should really spend a lot of our organizational time and energy and management talent on a system that keeps great people engaged and loving it every single day. Next slide, please. This is my mantra: never stop asking, how can we do better together? We always want to do better, and we want to do it together. Together is better. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sophia. We really appreciate your insights as well. We are now going to transition into our panel discussion. So I'll ask that all of our panelists join us on camera again, if possible, and we will dive into a few questions and get all of your thoughts about these really, really important topics that I know all of our audience members are interested in. So first and foremost, I will start with a question about really how can we encourage embedding career building and professional development initiatives into organizations, specifically maybe smaller organizations. A lot of times we see, one or two staff champions really stepping up and taking, professional development and career building initiatives for, all types of staff levels, and really taking that on as their champion. But I'm curious, how can local governments also think about making that type of professional development opportunity more embedded within the operations of their agencies? Whoever would like to speak to that.
Yeah, I'd like to start by responding to that question. First of all, I think that when we think about professional development, we think about sending people to classes or training or workshop or conferences. That is not the best kind of talent development. The best kind of talent development is learning by doing, particularly in stretch assignments. So it's not costly. The second thing I want to do about how to embed these practices into our daily work is to look at rituals that we can easily incorporate into our daily work. For instance, I mentioned a few: learning reports at the beginning of every staff meeting, doing post-action debriefs, putting an item on every staff agenda called team acknowledgements, where we talk about the value that people bring to the team. Doing stay interviews. It's crazy we do exit interviews after somebody leaves. We should do stay interviews. And by the way, I'll send Taylor some stay interview questions that we can also attach to this webinar. What do you love about working here? What do you dislike about working here? What can we do to keep you? What do you want to learn next year? How can I be supportive? We want to keep people, not only because it's very costly to let somebody go, it was just mentioned, but we invest a lot in people. We want to keep our talent, and then making it a ritual to do development conversations with our direct reports once every 6 months. Again, it's not that costly. And again, it embeds these learning and coaching opportunities into the daily work that we do in our organizations.
I'd like to add, if I may, that we need to make this everyone's job. It's not just Jen's job. It's the employees, it's their supervisors. Frank, I love the training all supervisors how to have these conversations, but the employee needs to participate too. And we have structures where we describe jobs and we hold people accountable for doing them. Maybe we should have on those job descriptions that part of your task is to grow new skills and put up your hand for growth opportunities and participate in new assignments. And that's just an expectation. And every time we have a performance conversation, we're talking about that too.
And we can train not only managers on how to conduct development conversations, we can train employees about how to conduct a development conversation or lead a development conversation with your boss.
Yeah, it really goes into that environment that you set. You know, if you have a trusting environment and those kinds of open relationships, that really helps. And I agree with what Frank said. You know, hopefully at some point there can be a budget, right, for this stuff. But if there's not, don't let that stop you. There are low cost to no cost ways of doing this and building it into the work. I think that's really important. We have a few rotational programs where people can get experience in other jobs for periods of time. The mentor program we have, you know, obviously it costs people's time, but there's no like additional cost to that. There's a lot of ways you can do things and kind of build it in.
I do want to encourage budgeting for it though. What we think is important to spend our money on is what we think is important. And if we're not putting this in our budget in some manner, capturing that this is an activity we want to invest in, it's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You look at talent development, it's the cheapest thing we do in local government. Compare it to maintenance activities or capital infrastructure or other things that we typically do. It is cheap, but it does require will, intention, and focus. It just doesn't happen. You got to really consciously incorporate it into your organizational culture.
If I may, just one more thought. A lot of supervisory jobs in public agencies are supervisory in name only. Those people have a full technical workload of their own. And oh, by the way, you're responsible for this team. We really need to redesign some of that so that supervisors have time for those investments in the conversations with each of their employees. What is it that we can help you to grow and develop that will be a good path for you and a good path for our organization?
Yeah, I mean, we promote people into management because of their technical skills. I mean, is that crazy or what? You can learn technical skills. It's the people skills that we need in managers, including how to coach people, how to support people, how to connect with people. Most supervisors, that's not part of the things that we hire them for.
And we need to support the supervisors and managers too. I was reading a HBR article about emotional labor. It is hard work to frame a positive experience for employees. We're hearing a lot about that with hybrid and remote work. Well, it's hard work in person too. So we really need to create some structure that helps those people be equipped and have some support for the cost emotionally that they bear bringing this positive work experience to reality.
Yep. If you ask most managers today in local government, and I've done this just about at every workshop, what is your primary role? They'll tell you, pushing out the work. It's not coaching, it's not developing, it's not being supportive of their direct reports and their team members. So it's a new reality for managers, and we have not provided, as you mentioned, Sophia, the structure and the support and the training to accomplish what we need now. And success happens in the middle. or not. It's not the top, it's not the bottom, it's the middle where success happens or not. So that's where we need to put some attention.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you all so much for those insightful comments. And I wanted to quickly build on a few comments that you all made around, low cost to no cost, those changes, that can happen at all levels of either supervisory roles or more junior level roles, people really championing those types of check-ins and ensuring that professional development is part of the everyday culture of an organization. I am curious if we could talk a little bit more specifically though about the investment part of it. Are there any best practices for trying to garner buy-in at a particular agency to get some more funding behind these types of professional development initiatives? What has worked? What hasn't? I know some of our audience members are curious about how to get, leadership buy-in to really have that kind of top level support for these types of initiatives. So any thoughts you all have about getting that buy-in would be appreciated.
Well, I mean, right now, the issue of talent, attracting and retaining talent is, foremost in the minds of city managers, county managers, department heads. In Palo Alto, we can't open all the libraries all the time. Why? Because we don't have the employees. So the same thing is happening in public works. The same thing is happening with finance, utilities. So this issue of talent is now, front and center. So if there was ever a time to make the argument that we need budget so we can invest in our people, boy, now is the time. And I would suggest we also have the conversation with governing board members. And we should be having study sessions with governing board members talking about what is our employee value proposition? Why would a talented professional want to come and join us and stay with us? Why would a talented professional be reluctant to join and stay with us? And what can we do to improve our employee value proposition? Governing boards, the demands keep coming from governing board members. We cannot perform because we don't have all our full, complement of talented staff people. So this is a good time to raise consciousness at the governing board level about the important, and they'll get it if you structure the conversation. This is the time we need to invest in employee development.
And I would say, if you don't think you're already spending that money, you're foolish. Go to Sophia's presentation, pull out that data, because you are spending that money, right? So let's look at that and go, how can we reallocate those funds? Instead of having to rehire these same positions over and over again, let's put that money in the development and retaining people because it's there and it's happening, and they're not two separate things.
I think that in the public sector, most of us came here because we wanted to do a good thing and we care about that. And it's just really, really challenging in a budget shortfall, many legislative mandates, lots of craziness going on environment to kind of keep your eye on the ball of doing a good thing. And we have to take some time to articulate our values and articulate beyond that what it is that those look like, not just for our communities, but for how we treat each other and act inside of our organizations. And if we can do that and post it on the wall so we see it every day, that will help us buy into, yes, of course we care about our employees. We want to keep the good ones and we want to do great things with them for our community. And why would we stand in their way of becoming skilled contributors?
And I would piggyback on that. I mean, as part of our conversation with governing board members, some of the behaviors of governing board members and some of the behaviors of community members are driving away our talent. And we need to have a conversation when we talk about why would a talented professional be reluctant to join us and stay with us? It could be because of governing board dysfunction. And that has a direct impact on our ability to attract and retain talent. And we need to talk about that diplomatically, of course, but we need to talk about it.
I would say too, don't work in a bubble. You know, that can happen a lot in the L&D space. You know, bring in those people, especially the ones who you think may be harder to bring in. You know, partner with them on maybe developing some of these ideas, or just getting some of those champions. And I think people will see that you're not just working out of the bubble. I feel like that's happened. I've seen that a lot in my career where people don't see the value of doing work when they do.
I think we need to also learn to ask people direct questions. You know, we think about a program like yours, Jen, or the giant ICMA coaching program. It feels really burdensome to try to develop. But if you ask the people who work for you, how can I support you? What is it that I can do that will make your career experience better and help you grow in the way you want to grow? Actually listen and do it. I'm going to say we're going to find a lot of the time it's not that big of a programmatic investment that we have to make.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely. Thank you all so much for those thoughts. Another kind of hot topic, of course, that I know is at a lot of folks' minds is equity and really ensuring that these types of opportunities for leadership development and career building are accessible to all, really with that lens on equitable access. I'm curious if you all could speak to that about how these programs can reach that audience and really be accessible for any number of employees who might be interested.
Well, first of all, I think we need to provide development conversations for all, not just for the favored. And that has to become a practice, that everybody gets a development conversation a couple times a year, and they get the opportunity to develop with input from their supervisor or manager, individualized development plan, and we provide resources and support for that. Now, it's impossible to treat everybody the same in terms of resources for their career development. However, if we develop a menu, just like they've done at SMUD, a menu of opportunities, some that are low cost, like speed coaching or a book club on leadership topics or whatever. Everybody gets opportunity. Some people get more intense. They may be one of the candidates for a leadership academy. That's more intense resources, but everybody gets development conversations. We train our managers to be supportive and know how to conduct development conversations, and we provide a menu of resources and opportunities, even though we don't treat everybody the same. I think that is, we're halfway home if that's our sort of philosophy.
Yeah, I agree with that. You know, putting those options out there allows people to meet where they want. And again, for us, we're still, working on creating that equitable environment. Like I said, right now we have someone who works in the call center. And so that's a little difficult. We're still working through that and continuing those conversations of how can we make sure that this person is getting the best experience they can out of this program. And so I think it's kind of a continuation, and sometimes leadership might change. You might have to rehab those conversations, but if everyone's intent is to provide a good environment and that learning environment, I think that helps. But I do think too, employees want a variety of things. Not everyone's going to want to go through our VLT program. Like, that's too much for people. And sometimes there are these other options, like Frank talked about, that could prime it. And then I think communicating those and just making sure everyone knows about it, in case you do have leaders who aren't promoting those opportunities as much, maybe employees can find out about them and reach out if they want it, if for some reason they're being blocked. Hopefully that's not happening.
I would agree with what I've heard from Frank and Jen, and I would just say also, the individual development plan that we make is a great tool, but we need to write it down and we need to revisit it with the employee. Did this happen for you? If not, what got in the way? And we help those things not get in the way. Your call center employee, Jen, is probably tied to a phone. Do we need to, hire a temp to carve out some hours for you? Or maybe somebody had, a a personal thing. Can we get our EAP to help you, or coach you through better flexible spending account use so that you can buy the help you need to continue to focus on growing your skills rather than being distracted? There are so many ways we can help, but we need to know what got in the way if it's not happening the way that we thought it might.
Absolutely. And pulling a little bit from some of our audience questions as well here, that note, Sophia just brought this up to my top of mind. We received a question about, about how folks acknowledge that leadership and supervisory roles are often the ones who are crunched to, try and implement these types of leadership opportunities and really be present and engaged. But there's also a reality too, where participants may not have the capacity or may not be able to engage to the fullest extent. And the folks who are asking this question are wondering, how can we encourage that participant buy-in as well? Because they might have some programs that are open and available, but folks just aren't biting and they aren't joining. So any ideas about encouraging participant buy-in as well?
Well, I think you have to start with people and what they want, right? I mean, we design programs and we think they're fabulous because we're the managers of them and they're our brainchild. But if it's not what people want, then of course it's not going to work for them. So, I mean, I think it is really important to keep that feedback going and open and understand that my genius idea doesn't work for everybody.
That's what I was going to say. Find out why they're not applying. Like, what is it? Is it there's no time, there's not an interest in what you have, listening to them so that you can put something together that actually is meeting the need for where they're at.
Plus, when we're developing a work plan with people, development is part of the work plan. We don't create 40 or 50 hours of work a week and let's talk about your development. I mean, development has to be part of the work plan.
Right. I think you got to carve a couple hours in there for that. You're absolutely right, Frank.
Absolutely, the capacity is so important, and having that kind of two-way dialogue is even more important. Another question coming from our audience, obviously we've talked about so many amazing, even just small to medium to big steps that organizations can take to really keep leadership development and career building at the forefront. But obviously there's also so much that it can come across as maybe even just a bit overwhelming on where can an agency who might be delving into this space for the first time really start. So I'm wondering if you all might be able to share some distinct initial steps that that an interested agency or department could take to implement the types of development that we're discussing today.
Well, I think that having some discussions at all levels of the organization about what is our employee value proposition. Again, why are people, why would they want to come and join us and stay with us? Why would they be reluctant? What can we do? Out of that will come some steps that we can take, including learning and development, that will enhance our employee value proposition. And then you can start anywhere. I mean, the thing about learning and growth and coaching is you can start anywhere and build on it. So whether you do stay interviews, whether you train your managers on how to have development conversations, whether you do some speed, the easiest thing in the world is speed coaching. Ensuring that we do debriefs of all our experiences and learning reports and team acknowledgements. And, you can start any place. You just got to start the journey here.
And don't feel like you have to reinvent that wheel. Use your network. Here you've met 3 of us and we've got things, and if after talking with the leaders and other folks in your organizations, you think one of those are a good resource. I mean, I wasn't here when we started the BLT program, but I know that they reached out and looked at what other programs are out there and what best practices, because you can pick and choose, right? Or you could try just kind of something off the plate, but it's like, it's a community of sharing because we all want what's best, and maybe you'll take something we have and you'll improve it, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I want to do that too, and kind of work on that. see what's out there. Don't feel like you have to create everything from scratch. And
Yeah, in the private sector, we steal, in the public sector, we share. So,
yeah,
you know, there's a lot of stuff to share.
I think I would just add, some program that I can't remember had each one reach one kind of tagline. Just have the first conversation. Talk to somebody who works for you and say, how is it going? How can I help you advance in your career? Perhaps it's not going to be a promotion. Maybe it's just going to be a skill that takes you to another place eventually. But I want to help you develop in the way that you want to develop. Write it down, get started. Then do it again with somebody else. And I got to tell you, it is really rewarding. When you start doing it, it's so much fun, you won't be able to stop.
Yeah, in fact, let me echo that. I mean, what we have found is that coaches love to coach. Coaches love to coach. It's refreshing. And they can get away from the dreariness of some of their jobs, but you know, helping develop people, helping grow people.
and share those experiences, right? Let the coaches provide what they got from it, and the coachees and all of that, and letting people shine. I think that builds an attraction to it, right? And they can see, oh, this other person got something out of it. It's not just learning development or HR, whoever is telling me about it. Other people are seeing a benefit.
Definitely. That proof of concept is so important. And like you said, it's such an energizing process for everyone involved. Fantastic. Well, the next question I wanted to ask you all is around longevity and succession planning too, to kind of pivot to this. It is kind of a big question, of course, but thinking about, you know, all of the things we've been discussing today around building, you know, specific skills or, you know, really meeting employees where they are with how they want to advance their careers. I'm also wondering if you all have any thoughts about how managers specifically can help encourage that type of longevity and longer term career planning. Obviously, so much of that is top of mind for folks right now with so much, you know, turnover in the public sector. So any thoughts you can share would be fantastic.
Well, first of all, I think we should ditch this notion of succession planning. It's really about succession development. And instead of, you want to avoid position replacement. You want to avoid saying who's going to be our next chief financial officer. What we're really doing is developing a pool of talent, ready and able to move into any important position. And that means giving them a lot of experience, different kinds of experiences. And people will tend to stay with us and, you know, have the tenure that we all want them, the longevity that we all want, if they are getting new experiences, contributing in new and different and more important ways. Again, top management has to be very conscious. Are we providing these opportunities for people, or they will go someplace else because talent is mobile? So I think we shouldn't really think about succession planning. It should be succession development. And again, it's a pool of talent that we really want, not a particular individual moving into, you know, one of the top positions.
I agree with you there, Frank. And I think we also have to think about how do we deploy that pool of talent? When someone leaves our organization, they leave a hole of a certain shape. But it may be that our pool of talent doesn't contain anyone with quite that shape. Are we going to try to force them into that shape, or are we going to be willing to reshape things a little so that that talent can really shine and really add value? And I think that a lot of times we forget that part of it, is that we have control of a lot of things that happen in our organization. We do not have to do them exactly the way they were done last year or 10 years ago.
I agree. I loved your part of your presentation, Sophia, where you kind of thought about what are the jobs we need, like what is the skills and the things that the outputs that we need, and reframing that and looking for people that have that interest or that ability, but it looks different because I know at SMUD we're always talking about innovation, and you can't force that, right? You've just got to let this happen, and by allowing that environment where people can show up as they are in those ways and show off those skills, it's going to create that innovation, which I think will just snowball.
And this really relates to this whole notion of job crafting. It used to be that we thought, well, you know, why should we craft a job just for this particular individual? Now we've begun to realize, because of this talent crisis we're facing, is that if we reshape jobs or recraft jobs, not only will we better be able to deal with some of the people leaving and having to still continue some of these functions, but people perform a hell of a lot better and will tend to stay with us if they're doing things where their skills are being used, they're learning and growing, the things they're doing energizes them. We're not constantly harping on their weaknesses, but focusing on their strengths. It's become, first of all, a necessity with people leaving, but also it's a much better way to engage and keep people.
I like the idea of that collaborative working, you know, letting people get some of that experience, because then you're kind of building that knowledge, right? So that people aren't leaving as big of holes as maybe they would. Because it feels like typically the way we work is I do X and you do Y, you know, but what if we kind of have some of that overlap and someone else comes in, and it may not be that whole thing, but gaining that experience that can help.
Definitely that collaborative approach. Again, it reaches across so many different things. Thank you all so much. I'm curious too, as we are nearing the end of our session, and folks have been really fantastic about submitting questions around capacity and you know, how to get buy-in from leadership. That seems to be a really common thread. I think one other thing we would love to hear a little bit from you all about, and I know Frank really talked about the importance of organizational culture, but specifically in the hybrid environment and kind of the nature of the public sector being such a diverse workforce in terms of some folks really being able to utilize hybrid work, other folks really needing to be in the field. I'm wondering how that kind of very diverse and changeable environment feeds into these conversations around leadership development, and if there's any other thoughts you all might have there about, you know, how that culture really feeds into employees and supervisors and you know, everyone's success.
Well, I think, you know, we're looking for ways. One, there's many responses to the question, but one response, I think, is that we're all trying to figure out ways to show that we recognize and appreciate people who are in the field who cannot do remote work. And we're struggling with that because it's very inequitable. You got a whole bunch of people that they're forced to come in every day, long commutes. They tend to be lower paid folks than some of the knowledge workers that we have who can do remote work all or part of the time. So I think one way is to really begin to look at how do we support them with more resources and opportunities for their leadership development and their career development. That doesn't mean to say we don't do the same thing for remote workers, but we really begin to focus on, you know, traditionally we've neglected a lot of the field workers and service workers that have to be there every day, all the time. So I think there's a great opportunity here to show that we're committed to some sense of equity.
Yeah, I would say sometimes it doesn't look like you expect it. You know, in 2020, we were in the middle of one of our leadership programs, and so everyone kind of went remote, right? But we had someone in it who worked out in the field, and so he didn't have like a laptop that he took home like almost everyone else in the program. So we found ways to support him still being a part of it, right? That was not a reason for him to have to not be a part of our program, because the rest of that year, everything was virtual. And so we found some office space for him, and he was able to participate, and it looked a little different because he was kind of in a far off office that didn't have great connectivity. So sometimes he couldn't be on camera when everyone else was or something, you know, but we tried to work with him. And then I think also with kind of that leadership buy-in and working with them, involve them in what you're doing as much as you can. You know, our leadership group internally presents to our executive team multiple times in the year, and that gives the people in the group each a chance to do that, It lets the leadership ask questions and learn, what are these people really getting out of this? And we found that to be really valuable as well, where you can see the light bulbs in some of the executive heads, like, oh, this is how this has been beneficial, you know, and they feel that kind of ownership with it. And like I said, some of our team has been a part of that program. So if you have any of that experience, you could let people know, you know, so-and-so has been through this, and this is, you know, one thing that might have helped them in their career.
Taylor, I forgot, since we're wrapping up in just a moment, I forgot to mention that one of the resources that are available to everybody is the 2022 flyer for the coaching program, as well as some of the career compass columns. But I highly encourage everybody to use the ICMA coaching program as a resource, particularly for smaller agencies that don't have a lot of resources.
If I might just add one thought, a lot of times as managers, we take a lot of responsibility on ourselves to decide what's good for people and how things are going to work for them. And I think we need to understand that people know what they want and need and is good for them. And we need to have those conversations. Our job is, when we have that information, to find a way to make that possible in our workplaces. It's not to decide top down what's good for people. And we will find that that's a really helpful perspective, whether we're hybrid or remote or in person or having COVID or not having COVID.
Right. Yeah, coaching is not about what I want for you. It's what you want and how can I help you. So that's a very good point.
Definitely, definitely. And an excellent note to end our Q&A session on. Thank you all so much for your insights. I'm going to quickly transition back to our slides for a few reminders. For our attendees who might be interested in upcoming ILG webinars, we do have another session coming up on hybrid working. So really kind of pivoting off of our ending notes of our conversation, thinking about culture and accessibility best practices. That will be on November 29th at 2:30 p.m. So we encourage you all to sign up if you can. And if you weren't able to catch up on our last webinar session in this series about recruitment and retention, obviously also really intersecting well with today's conversation, that recording and materials can be found on our website linked here, and we'll also share that as part of our wrap-up email. We would also just encourage all of our attendees to please join ILG across our different social media and communications channels. Our social media is linked here, as well as our newsletter, so we hope you're able to stay in contact with us. And once again, the recording and all of the slides will be made available in the next few days. You should be receiving a note via email, but if you have any challenges accessing that, please feel free to reach out to me or to Melissa on our ILG team. And lastly, I just want to say thank you again so much to you all for joining us. We are so thrilled you were able to participate in this session. And once again, thank you to our amazing panelists for their time this afternoon as well. For all of our panelists on the line, any last departing thoughts before we sign off this afternoon?
Good luck on your learning journey.
You can do it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, all. These are our contact information. If you have any specific questions for our panelists or staff, feel free to reach out to us, and have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.